Welcome back to the Sports Buzz. I'm TJ Walker, joined here at Zaxby's with Nick Roush, my co-host of Kentucky Roll Call, which goes Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 on Big X Sports Radio. Kentucky wins. And another thing that we briefly touched on about Kentucky's got some bad marks. Offensive rebounding can be an issue, or just stopping teams from the offensive glass can be an issue. Three-point shooting at times is a little wonky. What I will say, though, we mentioned they keep winning. The same can't be said for other teams in college basketball.
Can't
Every team seems to be slipping up left or right, and Kentucky is avoiding those losses. Yeah. Yesterday, you had Duke go down at Virginia.
Oh, man, you hate to see it.
They've lost now 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
And stop me, everybody, I hope you're sitting down. Hopefully you're on your sofa, you're comfortable, you're not carrying a heavy plate of food or anything like that. The updated net rankings, which the NCAA and the selection committee uses to seed these teams.
This is their advanced stats to kind of try to be objective, to weigh the big picture, weighting strength of schedule, stuff like that.
Strength of schedule, easier said than done. Quadrant wins, obviously. Offensive efficiency goes into it. Defensive efficiency goes into it. It's this whole pot. And we don't know exactly how it's all weighted, but that's a story for a different day. After yesterday's games, Duke has lost 3 out of 4, did not drop a single spot.
This was at least the first time they lost a Quadrant 1 game. The other games were 20-point losses to 500 Wake Forest and 18-win NC State?
Yeah.
Just terrible teams.
Yeah, not great. Yeah. Not great at all. Now, losing to Virginia, there's no shame in losing on the road to the defending national champions. Obviously, it's a different Virginia team than last year, but they are starting to turn it on. Virginia's playing well.
Probably be a 9-ish seed.
Yeah, and a dangerous game maybe for a potential 1, but it's not a great loss. And at the end of the day, whether you debate the loss or not, it is a loss. And Duke has had several.
A hell of a block shot at the end too. I was really worried that they were going to get that tip in, but Virginia came up big on the defensive end, of course.
They did, and Duke continues to lose. Kentucky hasn't had these stretches. Obviously, you had San Diego State pick up their first loss last week. We didn't get to talk about that. That was to a bad team. Gonzaga lost. Everybody seems to be slipping up.
Baylor took a bad one, too. Was it at TCU?
It was at TCU.
At TCU, yeah. Not a very good team, not an NCAA tournament team. They lost. So losses everywhere.
And Kansas State goes down to the wire.
Man, that
Kansas
was close,
able to avoid that loss. But these teams are losing to – that's the thing that I don't understand. And there's a portion of Kentucky's fan base that says, maybe the Sweet 16, maybe the Elite Eight. I don't get it. Like, are you not watching what else is going on in college basketball? Everybody is losing besides Kentucky. So give me UK against anybody, Nick Roush.
Well, and right now when you think of scary teams, there's not one out there. I mean, Kansas is probably the best team in the country, the one that I wouldn't want to face because as Azubuike is a hoss inside, Devon Dotson, really talented guard. But outside of that, I mean, really any of these teams right now, it's just going to come down to who gets hot at the right time. I hope Kentucky isn't peaking too early. Like we said, they still haven't played their best game yet. So, even a team like Louisville, who's really struggled as of late, if they start hitting some shots, even they could make a big run in the NCAA tournament.
I'm glad you brought up. Let's talk about the Cards and shift our focus. They are playing today, before we're recording, a home game against Virginia Tech on Senior Day. No way the Cards would slip up and lose that one.
No way. It's impossible.
We have a very bad curse of predicting things on this show that end up not coming to fruition. I feel very confident about U of L beating Virginia Tech. Let's assume that does happen. Where do you stand on U of L? They seem to have as much up and downs as anybody. They have some bad losses. They don't have too many great wins. And then it's just a team that you don't know what you're going to get on any given day. There's good David Johnson, bad David Johnson. Stephen Enoch seems to be regressing, which is not great news. Malik Williams is hurt. When are you going to get him back, and how healthy will he be? Because he's actually been one of the few bright spots as of late. But the big storyline, obviously, is Jordan Nwora. You can't have a conversation about the Cards without bringing him up, Nick. And he just seems to go missing when U of L needs him the most. Except when it comes to getting dunked on, in which case he's very, very prevalent.
Very good at getting dunked on. The thing with Jordan Nwora is that's really the missing piece for this team. David Johnson was the big one at point guard, and even Fresh Kimball's been fine as of late. Not great, but just fine. But really what happens is Louisville goes on these long scoring droughts. When they really need a bucket, you need to just be able to give it to a guy and say, all right, just go get it, stop the run. Just stop the run, whatever you do. I mean, heck, back in 2012, they would use Darius Miller fit that role sometimes against zones. But Jordan Nwora needs to be able to just go get a bucket. They were on like an 8-minute scoring drought at Florida State, and they just kept jacking threes. And Jordan Nwora was trying to be that guy by shooting long contested 30-foot shots. He's got to get to the rim. If nothing else, get to the free throw line just to stop the bleeding.
Absolutely, and it's just far too inconsistent for him, and you're seeing U of L struggle because of it. But when they're clicking, and we've seen U of L play some really good games, they're tough to guard. They're a team that I wouldn't count out in March, but you want to see them start to put back-to-back good games. You want to see it start to click, and unfortunately, Nick, it seems like they're going in the wrong direction. Of course, if you're a UK fan, that's not unfortunate to you, but if you're a Cards fan, and we know that you all are watching, that's not what you want to see this time of year. This is when everything's supposed to start to come together. Louisville has more question marks now than they have at any point in the season. The talent's there.
Right.
Do you put any blame on Chris Mack? Is the coaching not there when looking at this U of L team?
Well, I think Mack's done a couple different things to try to get Ward to respond differently, and they haven't worked. And I think part of it probably should be laid at the feet of Chris Mack, especially when they go on those runs and you aren't making significant adjustments to just try to get something going. Because, I mean, you're leaning on Ryan McMahon a little too much. And, Ryan McMahon's just a three-point shooter. So I think some of that goes on Chris Mack. But you know what? They aren't the only team that's kind of coming unraveled right before we get to March.
No, they're not.
Our friends in Indiana, right across the river.
That's where I thought you were going. You're going to keep it local. I like it.
Oh, man. Archie Miller and Bruiser Flint. They might have had a fight on the sidelines during that Purdue game. Archie,
we should have reenacted it.
Oh, man, we really should have. Archie, he kind of had a nice little 1-2. I mean, he looked like Tyson Fury out there delivering the haymakers to a clipboard. He was absolutely losing it when, you'll never believe this, Purdue beat Indiana again.
So if you were part of the Purdue class of 2020, congrats on never seeing your team lose to the stinky Hoosiers, because they swept them every single time.
Archie Miller now 0-5, I believe, against Purdue, or is it 0-6?
I would think it would be 0-6.
Or maybe even more. I don't know. Purdue completely dominates them in that series.
People forget that if you take away national championships, Purdue is a better program than Indiana. That's a big thing to take away. I understand that.
Right.
But they have more head-to-head wins. They have more Big Ten championships. They have more Big Ten tournament championships.
I mean, Kentucky's been dominating Louisville in that rivalry, but not as nearly as bad as Purdue's been dominating Indiana.
Yeah, they play twice a year. That would just really stink to have to be an IU fan, along with the 2 decades of mediocrity.
You hate to see it.
You really do.
But the thing is, too, is Indiana, they're still stuck in the NCAA tournament. They got that early win over Florida State. That was huge for their resume.
Yes.
They're going to be in the NCAA tournament. It's just a matter of, well, they've got to play away from Assembly Hall. So first round exit?
That's always been their issue in March, not being able to play their most important games always at home. They're a team, I think they're so limited. I actually honestly think IU has done a little bit better than what I would have expected.
Oh, yeah. Tracy Action Davis has been he's been fun to watch.
He's been great. They just don't have enough consistency from their guards.
They got a big recruit, though. Christian Lander picked him over Louisville. So good job, Indiana.
Why?
Probation for Louisville.
Oh, that's right. Okay, sure. All right, we're going to come back. One final segment. We're going to have several quick hitters. Nick was up in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. We want to discuss that.
And a new college football rule for Lynn Bowden.
By Lynn Bowden. For Lynn Bowden, by Lynn Bowden.
For you.
We'll tell you about that when we return in a few minutes.